And today I wanted to share a practice that I have been doing for the last several weeks and will be doing for several weeks more, studying the runes following Lara Villeda Vesta's Wild Soul runes. My apologies if I did not pronounce her name correctly. But the book is Wild Soul Runes, Reawakening the Ancestral Feminine. And I first learned of this book on Dawn Michelle's channel, Boho Tarot, which is one of my top favorites. And I thought this idea of tying the runes to the ancestral feminine was very intriguing. I've been meaning to properly study the runes for a long time anyway, and approaching it from this angle, I didn't really know what to expect. I was just very curious what this author's approach to it was. Because prior to that, I have a few sets of runes that I bought over the last few years. Have never properly casted with them though. I've mainly, it's usually just a matter of if I'm setting an intention or creating like a seasonal altar or something, where I'll go and look up the conventional definitions of the rune and seek out which one or two or three seem to be applicable, and set those out to reflect that intention. And really haven't taken it further than that. And so this appealed to me, this idea of following it as almost a course of study. As you can see, it goes by week, and you dedicate each week to a single rune. And so I am studying the 24 runes of the Elder Southwark system. So, in any case, the author give some background on the runes and suggestions for how you might spend that week studying. Each of these chapters has an inquiry that it begins with, and then goes into the runic poems of the Anglo-Saxons, Icelandic rune poems, and Norwegian, as they're available. Not every rune has a poem from all three of those. Where it's available, then there's also a translation provided. But that's the extent of what's provided weekly here. But at the outset, she does give recommendations for how you might meditate on the rune, how you might do a meditation to reach out to your ancestors. And I have just sort of absorbed the ideas of what she was presenting, and then kind of ended up falling into a schedule of my own to follow each week. And so basically what that is, anyone is interested, I will start, well, first of all, Vesta suggests like setting up a little, an altar dedicated to that rune. Like if you have meditated with it and you have a sense of what it might be about, what its essence might be, to create that sort of visual around it. And so I'm lazy and knew I realistically wasn't going to be setting up an altar for every single rune individually, but my easy approach has been just take one of my little card holders. That's also it's a tea light. And from the Witch's Familiar Runic Oracle deck, which I purchased on Etsy. It's an adorable little deck. Each rune coincides with a different animal. There's also botanicals and crystals. And it's a lovely little deck. And I don't know the runes well enough all the way through yet anyway to know how appropriate each animal choice is for that particular rune, but that's all part of it too. I just like having some sort of visual, and as I go through my own ruminations on the rune over the course of the week, I can keep looking back at this image and determine to what extent it seems to go along with what I have been reflecting on myself and learning, and to what degree I might actually disagree with the choice. And so that's all beneficial. And so far, I've been able to, I'm almost through the second et of them now. And so far, I feel like I've been able to at least draw some sort of connection to what the author of the deck was going for there. But in any case, to complete my little altar, then I have these runes, one of my rune sets. I keep in this little bag from the Bee and Snake on Etsy. The runes that I keep in this bag are from the Forge. Is it the Forge of the Phoenix? I almost said I am a Phoenix. Forge of the Phoenix. They're basically carved and drawn onto in metallic paint these little pieces of china plate. It's like a vintage china plate. And this is not the best way to show you. I'm sorry, I'm not doing top down at the moment, but they make a great clacky sound that I really like. And they're fun. But I bought these just on the whim because, again, I think I saw them on Dawn Michelle's channel and I wanted it. And I got it. And then I just felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to waste if I don't learn these runes properly. So I will pull the rune of the week from that particular set and just plop it onto my little tea light there, and voila, mini altar. So then I can use this as usually my first day of the week that I'm working with that rune. It just gives me something that I can look at. I don't look at it too deeply though. I don't want to get too many clues from the card, but obviously I glance and I see what animal's being used on there, and just sort of like take a superficial glance at it and then consider what that might mean. I don't pretend to be amazingly knowledgeable about different animals, but just looking at them symbolically and what I might associate them with, I might start to form some ideas, but otherwise I'm not trying to analyze too heavily from that card because I want to go into each week kind of forming my own meaning, and that's something that Wild Soul Runes really encourages, that forming your own relationship with the runes, and not that you're just tossing conventional meanings out the window, but you're making meaning of your own as well through your meditations and reflections. And I just love that. I love the flexibility, not just the flexibility of that, but just like the meaningfulness of that, because otherwise it can just become another list of keywords to have to memorize. And I think that I used to be great at memorization when I was a kid, but middle age, I need more meaningful reinforcement if something is really going to stick with me. And so I feel like this overall approach has been working really well for me so far. So like I said, I want to form my own meanings as well, or at least like see how I can intuitively attune to the meaning before I actually look into what those conventional definitions are. And people do come at it from different perspectives. This deck creator is coming to it from her perspective, and so I don't want that to influence me too much at the outset, but it does at least give me like a nice visual to just have this, as well as just the shape of the rune itself and the name of it, that I can kind of mull over as well. The author of Wild Soul Runes recommended, like, if you wanted to chant or sing the name, kind of create a little song for each one as a way of bonding with it. And I won't say I've gone that far, but I might come up with like a little melody in my head that goes with the name, a way of like singing the name in my mind will come through. And I mean, honestly, it can be as ridiculous as the first one was Fehu. And I just remember, without really thinking about it, just automatically what came to me was that old Yahoo advert where they would sing Yahoo. So in my head, I just kept hearing Fehoo. But whatever, it helped me remember the name of it because that's all part of it too, recognizing the symbols and not just what they mean, but what names they go by. I never thought I would get a grasp on that. And so the first day is just sort of letting it all, the visual and the name just kind of, absorb and just kind of repeating it in my mind throughout the day and glancing over at it because it just sits right on my desk right next to my computer. And it's always like in my periphery over the course of the day. And so again, day one is just about like that very light introduction and just gradually letting it seep into my consciousness and perhaps unconsciousness. So then the next day I will crack the book open and I will look at the inquiry. So let's go back to got a little journal that I've been using for this. And before I actually dive into Vesta's specific line of inquiry, I will draw the rune, write its name, and then just write a couple of sentences, just a little paragraph about what I see in the symbol. What does it appear to me as? And for a lot of them, it starts out looking to me like a letter in the Roman alphabet that makes it identifiable. And I might write that first, but then launching from that, just thinking like, okay, these are ancient people that would have devised these shapes. What were they seeing in their lives that they were trying to symbolize with this rune shape? And so, then all of a sudden something might start looking like a tree with branches or a gate or two sticks rubbing together to create fire, just trying to think of it more in the sense of the natural world and more primitive life. And so I just give myself the space to visualize the rune and see something more in it than what I initially would have thought just at a glance. And so after I do that, then I do my bullet points answering these questions. And the really interesting questions that she has too, because they're not totally giving away what the meaning, conventionally established meaning is either. Can hint at it, but they're very abstract questions. And so I feel like she does a great job of not like getting in your way of forging that meaning on your own. She's not steering you into a certain corner of belief. And so, for example, like for Fehu, the questions are, where did you begin? What is your true name? Whom do you honor? Who honors you? What symbols do you bear? What is your standard? Where on earth can you be found? How do you prefer to receive offerings? What is your relationship to my life? What is your mode of expression? What time of year is best for you? What stories do you choose? What elements are representative of your qualities? How can I be of service to you? Where do we begin? So they're very like abstract questions. Some of them I don't even understand, not of those necessarily, but now and then there will be one where I'm like, I don't even really know what the question is asking, but I don't think about it too hard. I just, whatever I initially take from it, that's what I run with. And I think that that's the only expectation here. There's obviously no right or wrong answer, and she's being vague enough and just very, some of the questions are kind of strange, and it makes me really interested in like what her journey with these runes must have been that inspired them and how she came to devise these questions to begin with, because they're different for every single rune in the book. Week by week, you will not be answering the same inquiry question. It's definitely an intuitive practice, and I will just sit and answer them holding my Forge of the Phoenix rune and just kind of tracing my thumb along the shape as if I'm drawing it, and just sort of meditating on that. And again, just going with first answers. And after a while, it starts to feel like, the rune itself is telling me the answer, dictating to me to write it down. And so it's kind of neat if I feel like I'm almost tapping into the rune's own voice and I'm just transcribing And like when I'm writing in the first person, I might be saying I in relation to myself, but then I keep finding that as I go on, the I is like the rune speaking first person. It's kind of cool. It does feel like on some level, something's coming through. And so I like that because it's a whole reason why I have delved into these divination practices, like the runes and tarot in the first place, because I've been really wanting to develop my intuition or just learn how to be more aware of it. It's probably a fully developed thing, and I just have blockages in the way. And so, just trying to tune into it better is maybe the better way of expressing that, as well as just like learning to trust it. And so, for something like this, where it's just almost like free writing, anything goes, it's like a great way of finding that trust and surrender to whatever messages are coming through, wherever they're coming from. So, that will be the second day of working with the rune. I start the journal page on it and write my reflections on what the shape looks like to me, and then I follow the inquiry in the book. So then the next step after that. Okay, so there's a meditation that again Lara Vesta doesn't she suggests it or just says you can use it. It's not, she's not like requiring it like this is the one way to do it. Just as that's something that worked for her. And so if you want to try it out, it's great for kind of like meeting the rune in a meditation and interacting with it. And so I decided to explore my own way of doing that to sort of knock out another goal of mine to become better acquainted with the soul card, which I first learned about Lisa Pepez's YouTube channel, formerly known as Supportive Tarot. She had soul cards 1 and 2, linking on the artist name. And I am so sorry, I should have been better prepared for this, but I will link in the description below. They're purely intuitive cards. There's no keyword or guidebook that goes with them. It's just the artwork. Lisa Pepez will use them for past life readings, and she just seems to have a real gift for interpreting them that way. And so, again, I just saw them as something that could really help me with tapping into my intuition, because I do use keywords and guidebooks as a crutch far too often. And these cards don't give you that option. And the imagery, too, every time I would see it, I'd kind of be unsure if I wanted to work with them, because certain elements of it can almost seem disturbing, but I feel like that's good for me too, to kind of be pushed out of my comfort zone and see what meaning I could make of that myself. So I definitely had interest in getting both decks so I could combine them and have this mega deck like Lisa has. And I was very excited. Well, because I second guess my abilities to really work with them, I was holding back on actually purchasing them outright because I didn't know if I could justify it, because I've been accumulating way too many other decks over the last 2 years anyway, and I didn't want these to become another thing that I spent money on and then didn't end up using. But then I was watching Dawn Michelle on Boho Tarot again, where she was culling her tarot and oracle collection and showing decks that she was going to be rehoming, and lo and behold, soul cards 1 and 2 that she was selling, price of one deck basically, and including bag that she had handmade, customized for the size of this huge deck. And I can't tell you how much I continue to fangirl over this. Like, I am squealing inside. Every time I hold it, I'm like, Dawn Michelle held these. Dawn Michelle made this. This is so cool. This is so cool. It's like, honestly, I feel starstruck. But in any case, these are very glossy, so I apologize if there's glare, of course, on that ring light, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with these already. But images, there's just something very like primal, yet also cosmic about them. very abstract, although you can usually make out some sort of figure in each one, but whether it's human or another kind of being, a lot can be left up to interpretation. So, in any case, I think you get the idea. But yeah, this is both of them combined together. So, yeah, it does make for this huge deck. And the cards themselves, just by this dimension, are massive, but I've got my long monkey fingers, so I can usually manage it okay. But sometimes I do have to like divide it. I like to riffle shuffle and overhand, and I might have to like break it up and do it in pieces. But anyway, I wanted to bond with this deck, and I was so afraid that after all my fangirling and then buying it from Don Michelle, I'm like, oh no, can I still justify this purchase? Because they seem like something so special that others really have, a powerful connection with, and you put to good use and regular use. And am I going to be able to do that? I don't really do past life readings. It's just not something I feel like is in my wheelhouse at the moment. So I wasn't really quite sure what I would use it for. So this is my long rambling way of getting around to, I realized I could use them to have a conversation with the rune that I'm studying each week. So what I've taken to doing is I will, on the next page of my journal, have my soul card conversation. And I have 3 questions that I'll pull 3 cards for. Asking the rune, who are you? Why are you here? And how can I work with you? Those are just the questions that came to me in the moment of doing it for the first rune. And I thought that maybe I would change it with each subsequent one, but then I've stuck with it. I just continue to do those 3 questions, and I pull 3 cards. I'll just flip them one by one so I can just focus on one on its own, but then as they get turned over, then start to look at, if I see a pattern emerging across the 3 of them that informs me as I go through in my journaling, interpreting what I'm seeing. And they have been so powerful for that exercise. Like, it is really uncanny, not just the meaning, like the added layer of meaning that they'll contribute to the inquiry that I conducted the day before, but also the overlap. Like, if there's a real distinct sense of the rune's essence or meaning that I get through the inquiry exercise, and then I see it like visually reflected back in one of the soul cards, it's so uncanny and amazing, and it just enriches the whole thing. And I like that the cards add that visual component to it, because it does, as I said before, the runes have almost come to seem to me more as beings now, and I never really perceived them that way before. When you're looking at the soul cards and you're seeing the figures in them, that really comes across more. And the figure in the card, I'm not necessarily seeing it as the rune itself in all cases, but especially for that first question, who are you, I usually am, or maybe just the way that it's interacting with the person, just being a human being, and how this rune is, applicable to our lives, because that's what's really comes across through this practice as well, like this reverence for them as such ancient concepts or beings, if you will, but the message is still so just universally human. And I find that even as abstract as the soul cards can be in their imagery and the way that I'm interpreting them in my journaling, by that third question, there's something that roots it into my everyday life. There's something that like brings it into the now and the day to day. And that's great. So it's not just all this big, free floating, bigger picture ideas. It's something that just becomes like grounded in reality too. And I feel like I end up stepping away with this sense of like how it applies or can apply to my life. And so that just adds to the space that it occupies in my thoughts for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. thinking through different situations and what sort of lessons like of the rune could apply. And I don't really know how to explain it, and I'll stop rambling on that. But it's just neat that like with each day and each different approach to understanding this rune, it just keeps layering on and enriching my understanding of it. But then, there comes a time then, as I have made this meaning for myself for the rune, or what it seems to be telling me it means, obviously I do want to know what the conventional definitions are as well. And so then that's what the latter part of the week starts to explore. So after I've done my inquiry and soul card conversation, then I do look to the rune poems that are in the book. And I might just devote a day to that, of just reading the original poems, the translations, and thinking about what they mean and how it does or does not coincide with my previous ruminations. Does it seem to fit the understanding that I've been beginning to develop for this rune, or is it giving me a different perspective on it entirely? And then I look back to my little altar card and I layer that in too. Like, okay, I saw this animal at the outset. I thought maybe it meant that. Now, what does it mean in relation to what I've been journaling about and what these runic poems seem to be saying? How does it all come together? Is there a common thread underlying it, or are these all like contradicting meanings? Whichever way it falls, it's all food for thought, and it all just kind of just keeps informing me through the process and gets me looking at things from different angles and making me realize that the runes are not as quick and dry as just memorizing a bunch of definitions. Like, there is a lot more depth and meaning to them individually. There's like a world of meaning encapsulated in just one little symbol. And so it's so cool. And I never really appreciated that until starting this practice. I thought it was going to seem like such a chore to continue like for so many weeks, but it's been great. Like, I'm glad that there's still several left to go because it's been such an enjoyable process. But in any case, the final day of the week, whatever that ends up being, like it's usually like on a Friday or a Saturday that I'll get around to it, but to really lock in some conventional meanings. Speaking of Dawn Michelle and Lisa Pepetz, again, I think it was in 2020, or maybe it was 2021. I don't know. I didn't participate in it at the time, but they collaborated with a boho rune study group because they were also committing themselves to learning the runes, and they had a Facebook page for it. They made videos for it, and I have been watching the videos. So again, whether it's a Friday or Saturday, that'll be my last step of bonding with this rune. On the last page dedicated to that rune in particular, I will go to, one of the whatever video where they're discussing, basically they'll discuss several runes in one video. And for each one, it's sort of just a digest of what they had found in their research and what ultimate conclusions they had formed, and sharing insights that they received from the study group community as well through their Facebook forum and even the online chats as they were doing these discussions live at the time, which I'm bummed that I missed out on it, but it's so great to have that recorded and able to go back to as a reference now. And I will just go to whichever one is focusing on the et that I'm on and just watch the segment that relates to my rune of the week. And I'll just jot what seem to be the top 3 keywords and then just take notes on the other things that they're saying and other insights shared by the community. And then after that, I will go to the resources that I did already have, basically things that I accumulated as I was buying rune sets or accessories. So I've got this binder that I keep some of my resources in, but I have like this set of definitions that I got from holisticshop.co.uk. So whatever, I'll find the rune and I'll see what their definition was of it. I also had this set of definitions from Simon Lilly, who owns an Etsy shop called Tree Seer. And he will provide runic definitions with his work, which is predominantly, or at least it's all that I've bought from that shop. He carves these bowls, or just sort of like meditative tools and totems from wood. Like this is a piece of holly that he made into a casting bowl. You can see where he's carved the runes or like fired them into the wood here. He'll also do these like tree runes that he matches it with. Must be like another system that I'm not familiar with, but in any case, so it's like a casting bowl. You could toss your runes in there, or this side, it's got the quadrants. You could do that as well. Or you can just like run your finger around and just be like meditating and just kind of see where your finger stops and then derive meaning from that rune accordingly. Same with something like this, where he's got inscribed different runes. There's that tree system again. And there's the more conventional. But it's, you know, again, just something that you could just be sitting and kind of meditating with, and just wherever your thumb stops, you can look and do that in lieu of casting. But speaking of casting, again, it's something that I need to do someday. But in the meantime, I had bought Kelly Fitzgerald's journey tokens. Kelly Fitzgerald of The Truth and Story, another one of my favorite YouTubers. She had collaborated with Corey Schmidt at Seven Oaks Grove, I believe, to create this casting cloth for her tokens. It can also be used as a casting cloth for runes. And in any case, in purchasing that, Corey had provided yet another set of definitions for the runes. So taking these three sets of meanings that I did use for reference before, studying the runes properly and just kind of going to it as necessary. Again, it wasn't, that alone was not helping the meanings gel in my mind, especially since like they all provide these lists of keywords that might or might not gel super well with each other. And so I haven't really been able to connect it all together until going through this and having this more focused study on each rune for the course of the week. And so after journaling about what Dawn Michelle and Lisa Pepez have concluded for themselves for these runes at their boho study group, I will then add to that journal page in my journal the keywords that each of these resources provide. And then the author of Wild Soul Runes, again, at the end, she shares some of her journaling that she did during her own process for each of the runes. And so then I'll go and I'll give a read for what she said, and then I will quote something that kind of really helps things sink in as the final bit of that journal page. It's usually just at the bottom here. And the fresh page starts for the next rune to study. So that's basically it, folks. Yeah, we'll see how the rest of it goes, but I've been really enjoying it so far. And so if this is something that interests you as well, if you've been wanting to get to know the runes well, or feel that you know them but haven't really engaged with them in this way, I highly recommend it. It's become a really fun and just more meaningful practice. And so, all right, I'll leave it there. Take care. Bye-bye.